more, I'm now joined by Jörg Rocholl, Associate Professor at the European School of Management and Technology in Berlin. Now, Axel Weber, the President of the German Bundesbank, presented a quite interesting and concrete idea by saying that banks basically have to put money on one side or to one side for a rainy day, so to speak. Do you think that's a good idea? Could that work?
Yeah, definitely. It is a very good idea. We've seen that the money, so to say, put aside has decreased over time dramatically, and I think it's a good idea to now do exactly the opposite, to increase the money put aside, and in particular for larger banks, which might be systemically more relevant than smaller banks.
Just because you mentioned that these system-relevant banks, why should they follow his advice? We just heard in the report that it's highly unlikely that any government would allow them to go bankrupt.
Right. So the key part here is the common synonym of too big to fail. So these banks are so large that they know that the government will just bail them out in case something should go wrong. But if the pressure increases on them, and in particular the taxpayers' pressure to not cover the losses again, then certainly there will be a chance to do exactly this, to increase equity requirements for exactly those banks.
And will the pressure increase? I mean, this G20 summit will be underway pretty soon. What do you expect? What outcomes do you expect from there?
I think the pressure is pretty intense, not only in Europe and not only in Germany, but also on the other side of the pond. So we saw Larry Summers saying exactly the same in that sense with respect to the equity ratios as the Bundesbank president.
Okay, thank you for the moment. We'll be talking again in a few minutes. Meanwhile, executives' salaries and bonus payments are highly controversial, especially so since the financial crisis hit, and they will certainly be on the agenda at the G20 summit in Pittsburgh. Now, let's be honest, most of us find it hard to understand how someone who's gambled away millions of euros, dollars, pounds, you name it, not only avoids punishment for losing other people's money, he or she even receives a reward in the form of generous bonus payments. It's mad. But then again, it's part and parcel of a system that flourished because human ambition and greed kept it going until it collapsed. In London, we met a banker who turned his back on the business just in time before the crisis hit home.
London is Europe's leading financial centre, and despite the crisis, it's still a magnet for investment bankers. Geraint Anderson lives there. For 12 years, he worked as a stockbroker and is now a millionaire. In the spring of last year, he decided to call it a day, getting out just in time before the crash. Before he left the industry, he submitted a number of anonymous articles to the media, pointing out the weaknesses of the system.
It was similar to being given a lot of money from someone else, told to gamble with it, told that the casino might close at any moment, and told that if you lose all your money, you don't get the money taken off you. Because, you know, if you make money for the bank, you keep, let's say, 10% of it. If you lose money, nothing happens. You may lose your job. So what do you do in that scenario? You just bet ridiculously, recklessly. And that, of course, is what happened.
He went on to write a book, providing an insider's account of life in the city, London's financial centre. He describes excessive greed, fueled by bonus payments worth millions. He, too, received such bonuses. Top managers in many industries and countries around the world are still keen to keep that system of financial incentives. Georg Funke also received generous bonuses. His case has fueled hefty discussion in Germany. He once headed up the troubled mortgage lender Hypo Real Estate. If it hadn't been for the billions of euros in state rescue funds, HRE would now be history. Funke was dismissed from his job. His contract was due to run until 2013. He's now suing to have his wages paid out until then, up to 12 million euros. Germany and other EU countries are pushing for a global deal on bankers' bonuses at the G20 summit in Pittsburgh. They want bonuses to be linked to long-term performance. Christian Strenger is on the supervisory board of DWS Investments, an asset management company belonging to Deutsche Bank. He's currently developing a codex for good corporate governance. Voluntary self-regulation hasn't worked, so the German government is looking to push through a law that will allow bonuses to be paid out only after several years of good performance.
Everything is offset. Someone may perform very well one year but then poorly in the following years. It's a very simple system, like an account where everything is added up at the end. And bonuses are based only on what's really left for the company in the long term.
But Gerrit Andersen doesn't believe investment banking culture in London, Frankfurt, or anywhere else is likely to change. And he's also skeptical about whether any mixture of self-regulation and legal restriction will be effective in curbing the financial sector's excesses.
You need international cooperation so that we don't have something like the crunch happen again. In reality, that's never going to happen. There's always going to be somewhere like Zurich or somewhere like Dubai which says, no, come over here, investment bankers.
Andersen is now working on his second book. This time it will be a fictionalized account of his life as a stockbroker. He certainly has enough material to work with.
And we're back with Jörg Rocholl, Associate Professor at the European School of Management and Technology. Now, what prompted the idea of bonus payments in the first place?
In the first place, it is about incentives. So basically to give incentives to employees to work harder, to work better, and just to return more to the company they work for. The key question now, of course, is how to design incentives. And this is the key part or the key question for the way ahead.
So originally it wasn't a bad idea, but it's gone out of hand. And the interesting thing, Wall Street, obviously, it set the pace, as in so many things, also for bonus payments in the 1980s. Bankers there earned about $2 billion in 1985. Some 20 years later, their earnings increased up to $34 billion, and that's on Wall Street alone. And since the crisis, bonus payments are down to some $20 billion. Well, that's still a lot of money. What would you say, what are such generous bonus payments based on?
Well, they are, first of all, incredibly high, and they are based on profits that banks make. Unfortunately, not always based on the profits that also sustainably can be achieved, but rather on short-term profits that have been made maybe in a given year, where risks only result at a later point of time.
Now, like most state leaders, US President Barack Obama has strongly criticized bankers' bonuses, but he also doesn't support a hard cap on bonuses. So what else then?
Yeah, this is the key question now, how to go ahead. And the US has made some bad experience with putting a hard cap on salaries. For example, under President Clinton, there was a limit on the tax deductibility of management compensation at $1 million US. What happened? Now all of a sudden shares and options were given to managers. At the same time, this year, the taxation of bonuses was increased. What happened? The fixed salary was increased. So we always have to be very careful about the side effects that happen, basically, due to the increased or changed legislation.
Right. So it's not an easy problem to solve. Jörg Rocholl, thank you very much
for
joining us.